to the Living Proof podcast. We're your host. I'm Evan. This is Brian. Tonight, we wanted to come to you guys and just kind of briefly talk about what our lives look like today as far as in our recovery and how it was in the beginning versus how it's evolved over some time now. So, getting into that, how was it for you in the beginning, Brian? Did you have a set routine in the beginning from where you got a sponsor to the things you did in recovery as far as meetings go or meeting with your sponsor? Like, did you have a strict schedule, or were you just kind of free flowing with it?
Um, it was kind of a mixture of the two because so when I got out of treatment this last time, I already had a sponsor.
Okay.
So like I had that going for me already, right? So I didn't have to find a new sponsor, right? I already had a sponsor and I was fortunate enough to already be doing step work while I was in treatment.
Okay.
A lot of people don't get um, that opportunity, or they're at a place where they don't work steps in treatment. So they kind of, when they come out, they're kind of like, okay, like I know I need to work these steps. That's what the case manager told me, or that's what the relapse prevention thing is always like. Oh, and make sure you go to meetings and get a sponsor.
Right.
So I kind of already had that, and I was already, like within a few days out of treatment, dropping a fourth step because I was working on it while I was in treatment. So, um, but as far as like, so that I was already doing the work like from day one.
Right.
Like he had me working, doing step work like in detox. He was
Yeah.
like, because I hadn't been that the last run wasn't like my worst. Like, so when I went in there, I was going through some withdrawal, but it wasn't like terrible.
Yeah.
So like I was after like a couple of days, I was pretty functional. So like he was giving me chores to do, like shit like that. Like there's like, you're gonna do this, you're gonna vacuum, you're gonna help out, you're gonna be of service in here. So I was kind of already involved in my recovery, not just in the treatment aspect of the
Right.
stuff that they do in treatment, right? So I was already doing that stuff. As far as meetings are concerned, like it was, I'd been told, you need to get a home group and stuff like that. And to be honest, like it took me a while before I got a home group because I was kind of, I guess what you would call like a meeting arbiter. Like I would go to a bunch of different meetings. Like I would go to all these different meetings, but I would never go to the same ones like very often.
Right.
So like I never got to know anybody. Um, I never, but then I would be like pissed, like because I never forget a face. So I walk into a meeting I went to 4 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
walk in there and be like, some guy be like, "Hey, I'm Jim." Like, "Oh, we've met," and he's like, "Oh, we have," and I'm like, "You don't remember me?" I'm like, fuck these guys,
Yeah.
But my sponsor told me, he's like, "Dude, you don't go enough, and you don't talk to anybody, so you need to start doing that, right?" So, but he didn't really place a huge importance on meetings, like he told me to go to meetings, but he was more concerned that I did the step work, that I was getting outside of myself, helping others. And he was like, dude, you don't have to go to a meeting every day. He's like, but I want you to go to some. So I kind of had that balance of, you know, going to some meetings, because I was in IOP as well, so go to some meetings. We're going to meet up every week, sometimes twice a week. Like we would meet up, do step work, and then another time out of the week, we would usually go to a meeting together. We would go to some, you know, obscure meeting that, some weird meeting like, oh, we're going to a meeting in Indiana. Or I'm speaking at this. I used to go with him a lot to like he would go speak places and be like, oh, I'm speaking at this treatment center up in Indiana. You're coming with me. Like, okay. Like it was never like, are you free?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is your schedule clear? It's like, hey, you're coming. And I was like, okay. So I was willing to take some direction. It was just like, I'm just going to do what I'm told. He's telling me to do this work, so I'm going to do this work. He's telling me to go to as many meetings as I can, within reason, so I'm going to do that. and then I'm gonna go out with him and watch how this thing's actually practiced in the real world, like how we do service work. Because he really stressed that to me. It was like, you've got to help others. Like it says in our book, like, it is imperative that you work with others. He's like, so I would rather you be out working with somebody else. He's like, you can't sponsor anybody right now, but you can go out and be of help to somebody.
Right.
So
Right.
you need to get off your butt and go do that stuff. So that was kind of early on was my routine. It was like um, just get involved
Yeah.
and whatever that looks like. That looks different for different people.
Mhm.
But for me, that's what it looked like. And we were talking a couple nights ago, or maybe it was last night, about why we got sober.
Mhm.
And things are like our sobriety, our recovery, it evolves. You know, like early on, I was recovery, recovery, recovery. Job number one was don't drink, don't use.
Right.
But that's evolved to I'm just living my life today. I had a guy call me today that I was at Landmark with, and he's got about 6 months more sobriety than I do because I had a relapse in there. And he called me. He's like, I hadn't heard from this guy in a couple of, like, at least a year, maybe 2 years. And he's like, hey, I'm just going through my phone. I thought I'd give you a shout. And we started talking for a minute. And he was like, he's like, what's crazy is drinking's just not an option today. He was like, I don't even think about it. And I was like, dude, I was like,
Yeah.
my man. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, hell yeah. Like me too. I was like, I don't think about drinking and I don't think about not drinking.
Right.
Like it just doesn't exist,
Mhm.
for me. And I think a lot of times when people hear that, they what they hear is almost like this: you think you're better than me. Like you think like you're you're treading on thin ice. Like you're not taking it seriously. It was like, no, like the problem's been removed. Like that means it doesn't exist
Yeah. I mean,
anymore.
it tells us in our program in the
Hmm.
literature. It tells us,
Yeah.
that as long as we do these things, that's the result.
Yeah.
We can recover.
Exactly.
You
Big
know
difference between recovering and recovered.
exactly.
Huge
So
difference.
we can recover, but we can also
Get sick again.
get real fucking sick again
Yeah.
before we ever put a drink or drug in our body.
That's the way it goes.
So exactly, it always happens that way
So
for me first.
is there like, I can't pinpoint an exact day that went away, right? But can you, like, in a general way, like, can you pinpoint like a period of time, or did you just wake up one day and be like, man, like, I don't think about that shit anymore?
So for me, I think it was, this last time that I went to treatment, and that was the first time in my life where I was like, I'm done.
Hmm.
I'm really done. And I went to treatment, got out of treatment, and I knew that I was in that bubble for 30 days. I
Right.
was in that safety net. So, of course, I wasn't thinking about using or drinking while I was in treatment. That it never crossed my mind while I was in there. And I know a lot of people struggled with it in there, but I
Hmm.
didn't. And then when I got out, I had put a pretty strict routine in place for myself to where, you know, Monday nights I was going out to Preston Highway for the men's meeting. Um, Wednesday night I was going to my home group meeting. Um, we had our own little private men's meeting on Thursday nights,
Hmm.
and then on Friday nights I was attending refuge recovery meetings. And I stuck to this schedule, and I was working the steps and working through the refuge program, and I was staying pretty busy. So I think in the beginning for me, setting that strict schedule, because I can thrive under some structure.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I can thrive under structure. So I had to make sure I had that structure, but I can't really pinpoint when, when that occurred, but it had to be very early on.
Yeah.
It had to be very early on, but this is also the first time that I really did some thorough work,
Me too.
and
Yeah.
it being honest, like I had worked the steps in the past years before, but this was the first time I really got serious about it. I mean, I know you probably remember in my first 6 months, I got out of treatment. I went through the 12 steps with my sponsor because I was fortunate enough to have a sponsor when I went into
Hmm.
treatment. I'd already had a sponsor. So I worked the steps with him, and then immediately is when I started getting into refuge recovery. So I started working through the refuge program with um, a mentor who then became my sponsor through
Yeah, we
AA
went
as
through that at the
well.
same time.
So,
Yeah.
and so in like the first 6 months, I had worked the 12 steps, worked through the refuge inquiries, and worked through that. And then immediately with the new sponsor, he wanted us to go back through the steps again. So I was on it,
Yeah.
so I can't, it had to be early on, but I don't know exactly when.
Yeah, I remember a time I would, if I could pinpoint it, like I would say probably after getting out of treatment, somewhere in the first month or so. So
Right.
month and a half, because I was making amends within the first month out of treatment.
So I guess for me, if I try to think back to 3.5 years ago and how I felt in that moment, I think it was so even today, I'm not going to sit here and say that drugs and alcohol don't ever cross my
Right.
mind. I'm not
Of
saying
course.
that
Yeah.
because that would be a lie.
Yeah.
But I can say it's very rare,
Yeah.
that I just
And it's just
randomly
a
think
thought.
of.
It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
and
that
it's
beer looks
usually,
good. It's like, ah, I can't have that.
but
Okay,
those
moving
thoughts,
on.
it usually only comes when, um, certain conversations get brought up,
Right.
or if I'm at the store and I see some type of alcoholic beverage that I've never tried or something. But
Right. It's not an
it's
obsession.
not like, oh, I want that. It's just like, oh, that's something I've never heard of before, and then
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah.
Like it's
Exactly.
the thought's gone. It doesn't. But early on, I know there would be times where I would drive down the road and I would be like, oh, that's where I used to go to get this,
Yeah.
and that's where I used to go to do this, and then it got to the point to where I would drive by those places and it's like they weren't there. I didn't
Yeah.
even think of it
Or
anymore.
it makes you sick. You come
Right,
out, it's like, oh, I remember that
so
time. That sucks.
it was removed from me pretty early. I would say probably within the first month or two.
Yeah. So I
I
remember a
don't know
time.
for sure.
So I started working at Rack at 6 months sober.
Mhm.
And within the first month of working there, I started like doing some groups, like teaching groups or whatever. And I remember doing this group, and we were talking about this subject, we were talking about a spiritual awakening. And afterwards, I was like, man, like, I don't think I had the spiritual awakening. So I called my sponsor immediately after the group was over. I was like, dude, I think I missed something. Like I need to. He was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I haven't had this spiritual awakening. He was like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Basically, he's like, you're calling me about this? And I was like, dude, I think we need to go back through the steps again. I think I missed this. And he was like, let me ask you something. He's like, do you act the same way that you used to? And I was like, no, I'm totally different. He was like,
Yeah.
okay. He was like, when's the last time you thought about getting high? And I had to think about it. I was like, it's been months. And he was like, oh, he's like, so you can be like around that stuff now? I was like, yeah. And he was like, dude, you've had it.
Yeah.
And but
People
it
don't.
just, but it, that's when it first clicked that I had had it. And I was like, man, it's been a long time that I've thought about that kind of stuff, or that I've had those same behaviors or whatever, and like we talk about that kind of stuff a lot because it's important to know that we can recover. Like that doesn't mean that we no longer have alcoholism.
Right.
So that's an important distinction to make because I can get sick really quickly if I stop doing the things that I need to do. Right. So, but as long as I keep doing the things that I need to do, then I can recover, stay recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body.
Absolutely.
So, and what I have to do is I need to take care of my spirit. If I take care of my spirit, then everything else straightens out. So as long as I'm doing that, and like we were talking earlier about how stuff evolves, so my recovery, like, so then I started working in treatment, right? And I started being, now treatment, now that job where I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people mess up in working in a field like that, is they treat it as their recovery.
Yeah.
It's like I'm working with others. Like, no, you're getting paid to do that. Like
Right.
that's your job.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong, like it's gratifying. It can be like you are helping others for sure. But that's not self-sacrifice because you're getting a paycheck for that.
Yeah.
So we have to do things on top of that. So and I would
Because
kind of
working in that field too. Like I've never worked in that field.
dude, it's tough.
I thought about it. I could have, and I decided not to go that route. Because mentally, and I got to see
It's taxing.
what it did with you and your not saying that it put you in a bad spot or in a bad state
Some
of
days it
mind,
did.
but I know some days it did, and it can be really mentally draining
Mm-hmm.
on people, especially if they're just using that as their recovery.
Yeah.
Not saying that's what you were doing, but I know
Right.
people who
Yeah.
did
for
that,
sure.
and they were getting sick again, but didn't know it.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that it was happening.
Well, that's when I had to make a change because I was like, man, like I was working a schedule that didn't really work well with my recovery.
Right.
Like could I have done more? Yeah, for sure. But like it was hard for so I was working from like 1 to 10. So could I have gotten up early and went to some meetings? Yeah, but the meetings aren't what I was really missing out on. What I was like, it was making it hard for me to work with others. Like it's really hard to sponsor somebody when you're at work from 1 to 10. It's hard to carve out time to do step work. And plus, if I'm not going to meetings, I'm not meeting newcomers. So I'm not getting new sponsees. And I was like, man, like I need to make a change, because I started to see it. I was like, the things that used to not affect me working in that field started to affect me.
Right.
Because I was like, man, I was like, these ungrateful little shit. Like these, like addicts and alcoholics are not easy people to work with.
No.
We're not. We're exhausting. We can be, but it can also be very gratifying.
Right.
So it's like when that one person that comes up to me and is like, man, you really helped me. Like that makes up for like 20 shitheads.
Yeah.
But so that gets tough at times, and it's because then once you start getting sick and start to fall off, it's real easy to not dive back in. It's real easy to just sit in it.
Yeah.
Or blame people, So I was like, I need to make a change. Like this isn't working for me. I'm not maybe I'm not putting like everything I have into work because I'm letting things affect me, So, but that's part of it, because I wasn't treating what I needed to treat. I was kind of making that somewhat my recovery.
Right.
And telling myself that I'm working with others.
Yeah. And I get that too. So like for me early on, I had to, like, I'm still with the same company, but I had to take a different position.
Right.
Because I knew what I needed to do for my recovery. So the position I had when I went through treatment and then got out, it didn't allow me to do that,
Right.
working 6 days a week. Well, and even on my day off, the phone never stops when you're in sales, and
Right.
that's how you make a living. I didn't get an hourly check or
Right.
like now it's a different pay scale with, salary and commission. Then it was just 100% commission. So I worked whenever somebody needed something.
Yeah.
It was go
You
time,
have to. Yeah.
so it was hard for me to get in any kind of routine, and I knew I needed that, so I had to make a change and go to a different department and do something different. But like as far as evolving over time, I had that strict schedule for probably like the first year, and then probably towards the end of that first year of sobriety, it started kind of slowing down a little bit. Um, and things have evolved a lot since then, but I can think back something we've talked about in the past, and you know I've never,
What is that noise?
I don't know, I think it's this chair
Oh.
squeaking. um but as far as like going to meetings, and I made that choice on my own. Had someone told me to go to a meeting every single day, like if my sponsor had said, no, you need to go to a meeting every single day for X amount of days or for however long,
90
like
meetings, 90 days.
I would have told him to fuck off.
Yeah.
Like I would have. I did those meetings. I had the set schedule. I wanted to still have time with my wife and kids and still get to experience these things. And, because nowhere in any of our literature does it tell you that, you know. So it's definitely evolved for me over these last few years. And now it's the meetings aren't what keep me sober. They're still great to go to. It brings us to the fellowship and to
Hmm.
meet newcomers and show people how this thing works and how we stay sober. But that's not the program. It's not what keeps me sober today.
Right.
And luckily I've got the tools to stay sober today, and I do my best to practice them every day. But like I said, I didn't get sober to have to go to a meeting every day. That's not what I got sober for. Like
Yeah.
I want to experience life. I get to be involved with my kids and their sports and their after school activities, and you know picking them up from school after work and taking them to school and being there to help my wife. And she has her stuff that she does, and I'm able to let her do her things for to better herself, and I get to do things still to better myself. And
Right.
you know it's kind of evolved in a lot of ways. And I even think, like I was thinking the other day, ultimately I did this for me. I deserve to have this life today. Like I deserve to be sober and happy and free, and I got to
Yeah.
experience what real freedom is. And you know it's amazing. And then I also sit there and I think about, I have so many other driving factors as well. From you know, I have to want this for myself, and I do, and I know I deserve it, and I want it. And then even on top of that, like I owe it. I feel like I owe it to
Hmm.
others. I owe this to you. I owe this to Nate.
It's
I,
a sense of responsibility.
yeah, I owe this to my wife and my kids and my family, my employer, um, everybody from the treatment center that's been there for me and took a chance on me, and all these people in my life. Like I feel like I owe this to all of you all as well. Number one is myself.
Right.
I have to be selfish in that aspect, and I have to want this for me. But now it's gotten to the point to where, like, just like we talked about with Jace, I earned my spot here,
Hmm.
and I'm not giving it up.
Right.
But I owe it to all these other people who helped me get here.
Yeah.
I didn't do this on my own. So many people played a part, even the ones that are no longer a part of my life for whatever reason. They helped me get here in some kind of way, So I look at it a lot differently nowadays too than I did in the beginning.
So I like we're on like the same wavelength when it comes to a lot of things, right? Especially this topic, because you mentioned a key word in there, and the key word is freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we work the steps, we get sober so that we can get taken to a place where we can be happy, joyous, and free.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm having to run to a meeting every day, then I'm not free.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. If that's something that you're choosing to do, like because you want to, that's cool. Like rock on. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if I'm having to depend on a meeting for my happiness, for my sanity, then I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I'm missing something.
Something's wrong.
Right.
Because that meetings, and when I say this to people, like you want to make someone's head explode in an AA meeting, just bring up the fact that meetings don't treat alcoholism.
Right.
You will see smoke coming out of people's ears,
Yeah.
and someone will probably, their head might actually come off of their shoulders, right? Because people think that that's the solution to their problem. And because you'll hear it a lot, you'll hear, well, meeting makers make it.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's one thing that meeting makers make, and that's meetings.
Right.
That's it. Right.
Yeah.
Now, meeting makers do make it if they combine the fellowship with the program.
Yeah.
Because there's two different things going on here. There's two different Alcoholics Anonymous. There's the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then there's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The program is found in our literature, in the big book. That's the 12 steps. That's the first 164 pages of the book, right? The fellowship, that's, talking to your sponsor, going to meetings, hanging out with sober people. That's very important.
Yeah,
like that is our, it's kind of like,
it goes back to the,
it's
like
the
I said,
support.
I couldn't have got to where I am without all of you all.
Yeah, and they work very well together.
Yes.
But one without the other, it's not nearly as strong.
Right.
Because we've talked about this before, right? That we've got this 3-part disease, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, and spirit. But we've also got a 3-part illness. And, we treat that with 3 different things, with recovery, unity, and service. So meetings are one part of that. Mm-hmm. That's a third. So if I'm only going to meetings, I'm only treating one part of a 3-part illness, right? So I need to do the work, right? I need to do the work, and I need to be of service. So I need to do all 3 of those, right? I can't put all my eggs in one basket, right? Because what ends up happening and I'm speaking about the person who is the real deal, the real alcoholic that it describes in our book, right? The real alcoholic. That's another thing that'll make people pissed off if you talk about it in an AA meeting. Introduce yourself as a real alcoholic. What, you think you're better than me, you fucker? Yeah. But that's what it says. There's moderate drinkers, hard drinkers, and but what about the real alcoholic? Yeah. So AA is full of a lot of hard drinkers, unfortunately. And they're welcome. Everybody's welcome. They should come. If they desire to stop drinking, they should come. But we have to be careful of who we're listening to in meetings, because the person telling us something might not be the real alcoholic, and they might be telling us what worked for them. Like just go to 90 meetings, 90 days, just keep coming back, but what, in my experience and what happened to me and what I've seen happen to other people is I can do that for a while. And I can have all this energy, and I'm grateful, and man, like I'm really on top of the world. I'm going to these meetings. The fellowship's great, but I can't stay sober off the fellowship, right? Because if we go back to the book again, I'm a big book thumper. Like I love that book. I read it all the time, and I abide by it, or I try to as close as I can, right? So, and it tells us that we reach a point to where we're beyond human aid. Right? Well, what's my sponsor? He's a human. What are the people in the rooms, the fellowship? They're human. They're going to let me down at some point.
Right.
Because they're human, right? They can't keep me sober. The fellowship can't keep me sober. My sponsor can't keep me sober. My therapist can't keep me sober. My wife can't keep me sober, right? So I have to put my dependence somewhere else. That's why we lean on a power greater than ourselves, So I have to do that. I need to put my dependence there. That's where my dependence lies. It doesn't lie in a meeting,
Yeah.
because
So
what'll happen, sorry, I just want to
no,
finish this thought real quick. So what'll happen is, in my experience, is that I'll go to these meetings and I'll hear people, share about their day, and hear Tom talk about his divorce again,
right.
and hear Jennifer talk about how she can't find a babysitter again. And I'll hear somebody talk about their boss again. And for a while, I'll be like, oh, this is interesting. But after a while, I'm going to get sick of hearing that shit, because I'm going to get to the point where I'm like, I need something with some teeth. I need to hear some hope. I need to hear some solution, right? And unfortunately, a lot of meetings don't have that. So I can't depend on a meeting to give me what I need, right? The meetings are great. I go to meetings. If people hear me say that all the time, they think, well, you're shitting on meetings. Like, no, I'm not. Like, you need to go to meetings.
Yeah.
But that can't be your saving grace.
Yeah.
Because if it is, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because look at COVID. What if something like that happens again and there's no internet? What are you going to do? You're screwed. So your dependence can't be on the meeting. It's got to be on God in the program.
Right. That's like you said, like the meetings are great.
Mhm.
I will always go to meetings.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
For sure.
that I won't. But when things come up nowadays for me, how it's evolved is if I'm going through something and like nowadays my first thought is, you know, if I'm like mentally
I
going
know where you're going.
like my first thought is not like I better get my ass to a meeting right now.
Yeah. If your ass falls, I'll pick it up and get to the meeting.
Yeah, like that's not how it works for me. Like it's great to go to a meeting at that time.
Yeah.
Not saying don't go.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is I'm able to really look at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to see that today, and that is usually because I'm slacking somewhere in my spirit, in the spiritual department, or I'm consumed with self, and I need to get out of self and help someone else and do something, So I think, and in that sense, I'm able to see those things, and then I can go to a meeting and try to talk to the newcomer or give back and provide something positive to that meeting instead of going in there and speaking on whatever fucked up crazy thoughts I was having or
a problem shared is a problem had.
Yeah, I hate that.
I do too. It makes me want to
just
puke.
can't stand that.
Makes me want to puke.
Because that's always what it turns back to. Is I get consumed with self. It's plain and simple is what it is. And that's how I get out of that is to make sure I'm staying spiritually fit and I'm willing to help someone and I'm doing something for somebody else. That's what it always comes back to nowadays for me.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
I think and you touched on this, right? Our intention, our motive, like whatever our motivation for doing something is important. Like why so if I'm going through something and I need to go to a meeting, why am I going to said meeting? Am I going to said meeting because I want to dump my problems on the table so everybody else can clean them up so I can feel better? Right. Or am I going to a meeting because maybe there's somebody there I can help? It's a big difference in that, because, and that's what I was taught early on, is I remember a time I was all up in my head about some shit. And I called my sponsor and we're talking about it. And I said, man, I want to go to this meeting. And he said, okay, why are you going to the meeting? I said, so I can talk on this stuff. He said, don't you dare. I said, what do
Yeah.
you mean? And he was like, we just talked about it. He said, you talked to me about that stuff. He said, go in there and share some hope. He said, go in there and actually bring something to the meeting. He said, what's the root of all your troubles? And I said, well, selfishness and self-centeredness. He said, so you're the most selfish son of a bitch in the room, and you're going to go in the room and talk about you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man. And since that day, I'm like, I don't do it anymore. Like, if I got, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't talk about our problems. We need to talk about our problems,
Right.
but there's a time and a place for it, right? Because we never know who's in that meeting,
Yeah.
because there might be some guy or some girl that strolls in there and says, just like me, and says, I'm going to give this thing one more shot. What do you guys got? And we said, do you want what we have? And all I talk about is how bad my life is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want that.
Mhm.
That sounds like your life sucks in sobriety. I don't want that. So what I need to do is go in there, even if my life is on fire, like in a bad way, right? I need to find some gratitude in that, some piece of hope, and share that. Now, if I need to talk about it some more, I need to grab somebody after the meeting or before the meeting. Hey, let's go. Can you talk for a minute? Like, I'm really struggling with something.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't talk about that stuff, but I don't need to talk. I don't need to go in there and, just dump my problems so that I can feel better, because that is selfish.
Yeah.
It's super selfish. Like, it's on selfishness on steroids,
Right.
because I don't realize it. And I might leave feeling better. Like, I will. I will feel better. Like, when they say a problem shared is a problem halved, like, I don't like that, but I will feel better from sharing it. But the poor son of a bitch sitting in the back that's giving it
Yeah.
one more chance, he's going to want to kill
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah. Somebody that needed to hear
Some hope.
and then we're like causing more harm
Yeah.
than good when we do that.
Yeah. And is that anyone's intention? No.
Mhm.
But the road to hell was paved with good intentions, so
Right.
because there were plenty of times when I went into meetings like, okay, what you guys got? Because I need to hear something. I need to hear some kind of hope or something, or like, why would I keep coming here? It's like, keep coming back. Why?
Yeah.
Because you all seem miserable, like, why would I
Yeah.
want to keep coming back? And when I sponsor guys, I tell them they're not allowed. Like, I'm not like a dictator, but there's a couple things that I'm like a dictator about. I tell them, you are not to share on that shit in a meeting. Like, call me.
Yeah.
We will talk about it. I signed up for that. We will talk about it.
Right.
If you need to meet up and go have coffee or go grab something to eat and talk about that woman that's pissing you off, I'll do that, but don't do it in the meeting, because, you don't know who's there.
Yeah.
You don't know who's there.
And a lot of the times we go in there and we dump these piddly ass problems,
They're ridiculous.
and
Most of the
then
time.
the guy 2 seats down from you,
You can hear his head hit the table.
well,
Like,
you're over here bitching about these piddly problems, and the guy 2 seats over, he
just got a cancer diagnosis.
yeah, or lost his
Yeah.
wife or his
Mhm.
kid or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and
Yeah.
so that's the meetings are, and I try to also remember, like, you have to be able to meet people where they're at.
So there's a
And
difference.
well, there is,
That's okay
but
for new people. They don't know any different.
yeah, I think it's, and sometimes it's hard to do sometimes, but when you're in a meeting, because it usually sets off when you do that and you go in and you just spill your problems out.
Oh, it's a snowball
It's
effect.
like a domino effect.
It's like a fishing story. I can
and
beat
then
that
the next
story.
person's like, well, let me tell you what's going on with me. And then
Yeah.
it just turns into that. So I think it's really good, and sometimes it's hard to do it given the setting or how it goes in the meeting. But if you can try to get in there and share some hope quickly,
Yeah.
to get things rolling back in the opposite direction before it goes too far.
Yes.
Because we are just a bunch of alcoholics in a room together.
Yeah.
And so it's a room full of people who are
Of dysfunction. Yeah.
dysfunctional and we're selfish by nature
Hmm.
and self-centered, and so it can be, it can be like that. So
Yeah, it definitely can.
that's why today I get to um I get to choose. I have the power of choice, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes it's like, man, if I go to a meeting and I'm like, man, this is getting every week I go to
Toxic.
this meeting and I'm like, I'm not feeling good when I leave here.
Yeah.
I have the power to say, you know what? Fucking time out.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I need to do something different for a minute,
Yeah.
and then I can, if I want to check it back out, I can go back. I have the power to choose who I have around me today, and
Hmm.
what I want to be a part of, and I want to be, you know, I want to be right in the solution, not the problem.
Yeah, I don't have to keep setting myself up to take an ass whooping,
Yeah. Like, cause
because
I had,
I've been to several meetings where I'm halfway through, I'm like, I feel angry right
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Like, and I do this little thing, and I told Jace to do it one day. And something that I do is like, I'm like, okay, next time you go to a meeting, just close your eyes and don't share. Just close your eyes and imagine you're a newcomer. Imagine that you are brand new. You're giving this thing one more shot. Are you hearing an adequate presentation of the program? Are you hearing what you need to hear to make you want to continue on your journey?
right.
Are you hearing some hope? Is someone pulling you with a vision? Are you hearing enough, to make you think that there is a way out for you, you know? And sometimes, a lot of times when I do that, man, the answer is no.
Yeah.
And it's discouraging. Sometimes it's yes. And I'm like,
And,
okay, this is a healthy meeting.
I can also go to a meeting that's a little bit of a downer, right? And
Hmm.
then when I leave there, I'm like, man, I don't feel good about that. But I'm able to be like, you know what? But that's the difference in where I'm at today
Yeah.
versus some other people. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's okay. We're not going to, every meeting you go to, and that's why it's important to try to venture out there and do
Hmm.
different things. And,
Yeah. If something's not working for you, it's time for a change.
right.
Sometimes
And
we
I'm not,
outgrow things.
I'm not saying that like AA's not going to be the answer for everyone,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you're going to meetings and you're feeling like this ain't for you, like there's other avenues,
Right.
because for me early on, I'd been involved with AA for so long, but I had multiple relapses, and I didn't know at the time. I guess in a way I did, but it was like, man, I've tried this so many times, like maybe I need something different.
Hmm.
So like I worked the 12 steps through AA when I first got out of treatment, and I was just like, man, I want to do something different.
Right.
So that's when I got heavy into refuge recovery. And that opened my eyes to so many different things and that I've never looked at before through AA. But then it also brought me back.
It strengthened my AA.
It did.
Yeah.
It brought me back and it helped me understand a lot of stuff on a deeper level than I never had experienced before. So I had to step out and try something different to be able to come back. So it's not, I know AA is not the only way. It's the way I know how to
Right.
show someone how to stay sober.
Yeah. There's more than one way to have a spiritual experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I've got sponsees that started working the steps through AA and then they vanished, and but they're still sober, but they went a different route, whether it was church, and
right.
but at the end of the day, the solution, the tipping,
It's the same.
it's the same.
Yeah.
You know, through refuge, it's a
it's
spiritual.
just a different way to get there.
Right. You know, the end result to recover, no matter which way you go, is always the same, and that is some sort of higher power, greater than
Yeah.
yourself. That's what it comes down to.
Mhm.
Whether it's through refuge, you know, all about the spirituality
Celebrate
and
recovery,
celebrate recovery
whatever it
and
is.
AA and NA and church.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the same thing,
Mhm.
you know. So, you know, I love AA, all the good and the bad.
Yeah.
You know, there's you're gonna find both. So
I think, where I get, I don't know if frustrated is the right word or not, but I don't get frustrated with people because I know where they're at, right? And I can empathize with that because I've been there. But once you're on the other side and you know that there's a better way to live and there is a solution, like and you can see it, like I can see it in people, like they're just not free, and I don't say that to be like judgmental or anything, but it's just like some people, like they say they're sober for 3 years, but they still can't go by a liquor store,
right.
or they can't be around other people drinking. And like, my heart goes out to them. And when I say it frustrates me because I just want to be like, hey, there's a way. Like I want them to get it,
Yeah.
because I've experienced both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
And this side is so much better,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I want them to experience that, but it frustrates me because sometimes it's not my place or it's not my business what they do with how their recovery looks, how their journey looks. So I find myself fighting that a lot because I just want to, and I don't do it very often, but I find myself just wanting to be like, hey, like, why don't you do this, you know,
So I
go
will
back through it. Something's missing.
I will do that with um like people in our immediate circle.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna do that
No,
to
I don't.
just anybody.
I don't. I
You know.
want to,
No, yeah,
but
I
I
might
don't.
want to, but I just try to remember that, you know, everybody's on a different path.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, if we don't put that first one in us, we all have a shot. You
Right.
know, so however we get there, and sometimes it might take others longer. You know,
Yeah.
a guy that used to sponsor me, he's been sober for 40 plus years, and when he was 20 years sober, he was the craziest motherfucker you would have ever met. And he's 20 years sober and he's cussing everybody out nonstop and
Right.
getting in altercations and coaching little league and getting thrown out of little league games and throwing shit. And dude's 20 years sober, you know, but for it took him that long to get to now. You see him, and
Nicest guy in the world.
he's the nicest guy in the world. You don't hear him say anything sideways ever. Like, doesn't even want to harm an insect. You know,
Right.
he's completely transformed. So I always try to keep him as an example in my mind that everybody's journey is different. Everybody's on a different path. And sometimes it's hard to do that. But then again, we have to, while I was listening to you talk and just thinking about it, because we've had these conversations, is that still, that's I don't know if it's selfish of us in a way.
Enabling, in a way.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like,
Is it dishonest?
well, no, not saying that, but it's us wanting to be in control.
That too. Yeah.
It's us wanting to control everything.
Yeah.
And just tell people that, you know. But I can't say, like I said, I try to remember that everybody's on a different path and things happen at different times. And I know at one point, everybody looked at me that way.
Yeah.
You know, and they still could. because
Yeah.
people will still hear me say some crazy shit sometimes, and they'll be like, "Wait a minute, you're
Right.
you're sober," but I'm always fucking around and
Yeah.
being goofy. But even at that time, like people look at you sometimes and they're like, "Wait a minute, you're not supposed to act that way." You know what I
Well,
mean?
we're not all saints,
Yeah, yeah,
but at the same time, so like where I struggle with that is, like if I don't have, what would I call it? Spiritual consent with somebody. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I have spiritual consent with you. Like I can say something to you if,
absolutely.
if
That I'm not
if
gonna
you're
say.
slacking on something, or I can point it out.
Yeah,
Like I don't have that with certain people.
right.
So I have to remember that. But this tug of war that I go on with in my head, like part of it, I'm sure is like, hey, I want to be in control. I want to help this person. But part of it is me thinking like, I didn't wake up until someone flat out just told me, like, hey, knucklehead, like you're the reason why you're not getting the results you're looking for is because you're not doing the things that we did. So that's kind of where I struggle. Is like maybe no one's telling this person. They don't know. So maybe am I doing them a disservice by not telling them?
Well, I think for me, it's kind of like if
But there's probably a way to tell them.
like
But you know,
my support group and sponsees, like if you ask me to be your sponsor, I'm gonna say some shit that you're not gonna like sometimes.
yeah,
Like I have I've got a new sponsee right now, and so I haven't met him in person. He was, you know, a mutual friend of ours reached out and
right.
asked me if I was willing to take on a sponsee. He gave the guy my number and he called me.
Mm-hmm.
He called me right off the bat, like within 10 minutes.
Right.
He called me. And I was like, okay, cool. So talked to him for a minute. Told him one thing to do. One thing to do. And that was on, I think, Monday. And I said, okay, we're going to get together this weekend. I'll come pick you up. We'll go get something to eat, shoot the shit, and we'll get started. Dude, I said, call me every day until then. Stay in touch with me every day until then.
Right.
He ain't called me one time.
Yeah.
I've texted him every day. I ain't heard from him in a couple days now. I'm supposed to meet with him on Sunday, so I'm going to still, because I get it too,
Right.
Being a month sober and not knowing what's going on. So if we do meet up Sunday, if he answers and meets up with me on Sunday, I will let him know. Like I gave you one simple thing to do, you didn't do it, but now this is what we're going to do. If you want me to show you how this thing works, you have to be willing
Yeah.
to do this thing and to take suggestions. And I get it. It's like super uncomfortable calling somebody you don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, is
but
it that bad?
but it's not. It's pretty simple.
It's not that
So
bad.
I just, especially here lately, I've tried to, I guess, change my perspective on a lot of things and just try to remember that, I feel like we're in a position to where, and it took me a long time to get to this point.
Yeah, for sure.
It really did. It took me a long time. I mean, I've been in and out of, I started trying to get sober like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I'm at 3.5 years sober now, but it took me a long time to get to this state of mind that I'm in and experience the true freedom. It took a long time to get here.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to get at is like once you experience that.
Right. I just want everybody.
Yeah, it's like,
it.
and it's not because I'm trying to be a dick,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm trying to be judgmental, or I'm not trying to do that. It's just like, hey, man, like there's a better way. Like,
Yeah.
I just want people to get it because if they get it, then they can get in the trench and help us.
Mm-hmm.
Then they can start sponsoring other people, or they can start carrying the message of hope. They can, and then like because the more people we have doing that, like the better off we're going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just struggle with that sometimes, but it is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be. Sometimes Jace mentioned it, when he was here about the gift of desperation. Like you can usually tell pretty quick if somebody, wants to do it or not.
Yeah.
You just watch their feet. That's all you got to do is, are you desperate? And some people aren't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I've told the last couple of guys I've sponsored, like, hey, dude, here's what's required. If you're not willing to do that, that's cool.
Yeah.
But don't waste my time.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to waste yours.
You can always come back.
Yeah.
When you're ready.
Yeah, exactly.
If you make it back.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've unfortunately, we've seen quite a few people or known quite a few people that didn't make it back. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm more rigid. I don't know if that's the right word, but I can be kind of rigid sometimes with guys, because this shit's for real.
Yeah.
Like we're not talking about some little cold you've got. We're talking about life or death, and I treat it that way.
Well, yeah, because it is.
And sometimes I rub people the wrong way because like he's so fucking rigid. I'm like, well, what's rigid is going to someone's funeral and seeing, their, little girls crying or their wife crying or their mom or dad, like burying their son. Like that's rigid.
Yeah, too many times.
Yeah, that's what's rigid. So. I don't know, man, but some guys get it and some guys don't, and I don't know. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, but I don't know. That's why we don't chase drunks.
Right.
It's like on to the next one. There's not a shortage.
No.
Of us out there.
No, there's definitely not.
There's plenty. You just go out there and shake a tree and one of them will fall out.
Yeah.
Especially around where we work.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
We're not hard to find.
Yeah.
That's one thing that kills me is like, hey man, you got any, like, you've been sober for a while, you got any sponsors? I just can't find it. Like, well, you ain't looking, bro.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're not looking.
Because a lot of the times, like, you just got to go. Like, because it's hard for a newcomer to come in and really ask someone to sponsor them. It's hard.
Our literature actually says the opposite, that we're supposed to approach them.
Exactly. Like we should go to them.
Yeah, because they don't know what to ask.
Like instead of in meetings where they're like, okay, raise your hand if you're willing to sponsor. Like
I've done that a couple times.
That's cool. But why don't we say, raise your hand if you're looking for a sponsor.
That's what I've done a couple of times on the Wednesday night meeting.
Yeah,
and people look at me like, "Why'd you do it like that?" I'm like, well, when a couple people raise their hand, I'm like, okay, all you people in here that are available to sponsor, there they are.
Right.
I go get them.
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, that's not what's on the sheet.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. Like, because people are scared when they first come in. They don't know what to do.
They don't. The newcomer doesn't know what questions to ask.
Right. That's why I had to let other people show me.
Yeah, we're supposed to be teachers.
Right. I think I've had that happen a couple times in the past to where, and I've had several sponsees this go around where, they didn't just come to me and say, hey, will you sponsor me? It was other people were like, hey, I've got somebody that will sponsor you, you know, and then relationships grow from there and we get sober together and, all these great things happen, and it's completely, they didn't know me at all, until someone said, hey, call this guy.
So that's a good point to bring up, right? It's like when we're looking for a sponsor, number one, just because we get a sponsor doesn't mean that we are tied to that sponsor for the rest of our life.
Yeah, I've had several.
I'm on my third in 4 years,
Right, and I'm on my third.
Yeah, so
in 3.5 years.
Yeah, so there's no like rule, like once you make this commitment, like you are tied to that, you know? So what's more important is not finding the perfect person right away. It's getting started. Like the best time to get started is now.
Yeah,
Like
just
go
someone who
get
can
somebody.
show you and
You
help
know,
you.
we know a guy that for years he wouldn't get a sponsor because he would call me. My life's falling apart, man. I really need a sponsor. Like, okay, get one. Go ask somebody. Like, just go ask somebody. Like he's not going to just show up on your knock on your door and be like, "Hey, I heard you were looking for a sponsor." Like, that's not going to happen. Like no one knows you need a sponsor.
Right.
Like go ask someone. And then I offered to sponsor this guy one day. He was like, "Man, I just need a sponsor." And I was like, "Dude, I'll sponsor you." And he was like, "No." He's like, "I'm looking for someone who's like between age like 52 and 60, retired." And he had all these stipulations. And I was like,
Yeah.
you're looking for a daddy." I was like, "You're not going to find that guy." He's like, "Looking for a father figure." And I was like, you're looking for all the wrong shit. I was like,
Yeah.
"You need to find someone who's had a spiritual experience as a result of working the steps. That's it.
Yeah.
You need someone that knows how to get you from A to B.
Yeah.
That's all you need, bro." And he took forever to get one, like years longer, to get one.
And
Because
we know what happened as
yes,
well.
yes, and I was just like, "Come on, dude! Like, I'm giving you, like, I'm offering to do it for you, And he was just like, "No, like, what's important is to get started. It's not to find that perfect person. Now, you might get lucky and find the person that you end up being best friends with for the rest of your life. You might not. You might find someone you're like, man, I do not like this guy. And that's okay. You don't need to like them.
Right.
I've sponsored a few guys that I just flat out don't even want to be in the same room with.
Right.
But I still sponsor them.
Yeah.
They give me the creeps. I'm like, I don't want you to know where I live.
Yeah.
We're meeting at the park, bro.
Yeah.
You're not coming to my house.
Right.
But at the same time, like that's what I signed up for. And because I didn't meet my sponsor, someone same way as you, a guy at a treatment center, a tech said, I said, "I'm looking for a sponsor. And I heard you know a guy." He was like, "Yeah, here's his number. Call him." I didn't meet him until I got out of treatment, and I met him and I was just like, okay, like, cool. Like I wasn't looking for that perfect person.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for, he's got to be a little shorter than me so I can have some dominance.
Right.
He's got to drive a car that's not quite as nice as mine, or, he's got to have a Corvette, like,
Yeah.
no, none of that shit's important.
Right.
Well, I got to have someone that I can relate to. That's a bonus. You don't have to have that.
Right.
You don't have to have that to make a beginning.
I think so I'm on my third sponsor in 3.5 years. Which I guess the first one, he was my sponsor beforehand, like
Right.
before I relapsed, and so
Right.
he was still my sponsor after I got out of treatment this time. But he just saw that I was getting into some stuff that he didn't know about as far as the refuge goes and stuff. So he was like, "Hey, you might want to. You're going on a different path than what I know.
That's
So
a
you
good
might."
sponsor right there.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like anything bad happened there. It was
Right.
just, "Hey, you're going down a different path that I don't know anything about. Maybe you should find somebody else that does."
Right.
Well, then that led me to my next sponsor, which I didn't even ask him to be my sponsor. He just offered.
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, let's do this."
Right.
And then things happened that relationship ended in a whole different way that we don't need to go into here.
Right.
But and then my current sponsor, I asked him to be my sponsor, but I can think back, and so Tony's my current sponsor, but the last two, like, I didn't ask either one of them to be my sponsor.
Right.
It just happened. I didn't ask them to. So there's so many different ways to get a sponsor. I think I think a lot of the times it's more important for us to go to them, or
Yeah.
if somebody asks me and I can't do it, instead of leaving that person astray, I can send them somewhere else.
Right.
And
Well, like
still
with
pass
a
it
good
on.
example of that is like Jake. I'd been going up to rack, and going up there and taking a meeting up there. And he had been there for a couple weeks, and he comes to the meeting, and I think it was maybe Jeremy that said something to me one day. He's like, he needs to find a sponsor. And I was like, okay. So I planted a seed in my head, so we're at a meeting one time and we're talking about sponsorship. And he asked me to sponsor him, but the way that, so this is how we can use some of our character defects as assets, like, because I manipulated the situation so that he would feel comfortable asking me. Because I knew I had a feeling he wanted to ask me.
Yeah.
So I was just like, somebody asked about, how do you find a sponsor or something like that. And I was just like, here's what you do, man. I said, you go up to somebody and you ask them if they've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. That's it. I said, you're going to get one or two responses. They're either going to look at you like, what the fuck? And you don't want that person. I said, or you're going to get someone who's going to say, man, where the hell did you hear that? Come on, let's go. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So after the meeting, Jake comes up to me and he's like, hey, have you had a spiritual awakening as a result of working the step? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's go. I was like, so I kind of manipulated him. And he might have asked me anyways. I don't know. But knowing Jake, he might not have.
Right.
So I kind of put it out there so that he was like, oh, okay, it's cool to ask him. You know what I mean? So, but in my mind, I was asking him, like I was searching for him, I was like, just kind of throwing it out there to see what happened, see if I catch anything, and I did, so I don't know, man. I think it's, I think that was a good point that you made, that we've got to, it says we tried to carry this message, right? That those words have meaning, like carry, and tried. Yeah. It means we go out and hustle. It means we look for these people. Yeah. We don't just wait.
I mean, I know that, we work through the 12 steps, and so many people never accomplish. And they can be sober for a long time, and they, in their mind, they're like, I worked the 12 steps. I worked the 12 steps. But you didn't, because the 12th step never ends.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Right.
You never complete them.
Right.
The 12th step is, we carry this message and we help other, and we pass it along to other people.
Yeah.
So it never ends, so. But you want
to wrap it up?
Wrap this thing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 2 episodes tonight. So that was cool. We got our little recovery time in.
Yeah.
So I love doing this, man. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I got good so many things I still have to say, but maybe for another time.
Yeah, don't run out of steam.
So, yeah. No, I'm full of shit, bro.
Right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.